Having the stroke, I was just really, really, really fatigued all the time. Like my day started with, got up, had breakfast, went to bed, had my speech therapy lesson, went back to bed, had lunch, went back to bed, had dinner, went back to bed. So having that 1 hour of speech therapy was very, very, very draining because the brain was really quite fragile. And putting that energy into the speech therapy, that's all I had.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Hello and welcome to Recovery After Stroke, a podcast full of answers, advice, and practical tools for stroke survivors to help you take back your life after a stroke and build a stronger future. I'm your host, three-time stroke survivor, Bill Gassiamis. After my own life was turned upside down and I went from being an active father to being stuck in hospital, I knew if I wanted to get the life back that I loved before, my recovery was up to me. After years of researching and discovering, I learned how to heal my brain and rebuild a healthier and happier life than I ever dreamed possible. And now I've made it my mission to empower other stroke survivors like you to recover faster, achieve your goals, and take back the freedom you deserve. If you enjoy this episode and want more resources, accessible training, and hands-on support, check out my Recovery After Stroke membership community, created especially for stroke survivors and caregivers. This is your clear pathway to transform your symptoms, reduce your anxiety, and navigate your journey to recovery with confidence. Head to recoveryafterstroke.com to find out more after this episode. This is episode 165, and my guest today is Francisca Wilson, who experienced an ischemic stroke on day one of her arrival to the trip of a lifetime in Nepal 5 years ago. 5 years on, Fran is continuing to recover while managing global Broca's aphasia.
Yeah.
Fran Wilson, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Bill. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for being here. Tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
So, strokes changed my world upside down. October 2016, I had a stroke in Nepal. We were going down just before I turned 50, so I was 49 years old. And we were going to be trekking at Annapurna and trekking, but the holiday didn't kind of work out like that. So we went to the airport at Kathmandu, and then we went to the hotel, and about 45 minutes after that, I had a stroke. So the holiday didn't kind of work out as I expected.
So you were already in Nepal, and did something change with your trip, or were you just heading to the trekking expedition? What happened? How did it?
Yeah, so we were going on holidays. We were going to be trekking, and we're going to be volunteering to school. So through Kathmandu. So the holiday was shortened for about 45 minutes. So we went from Perth to Kathmandu, and then things went pear-shaped. So yeah, I was went to the hotel, and after that I was slumped next to the bed, and my partner at that point, he saw the signs that I'd had a stroke. So yeah, so in Kathmandu it's very different over there with the health system. So having the having a different language as well. So it kind of started my holiday or hospitalization was very, very different. So yeah.
Did you have any signs or symptoms that something was going wrong before you left Australia to go on this trip?
No, like it was actually quite healthy. We're doing lots of walking for our trip. I think the only thing, there's probably one thing that is really quite bizarre. Like when we went to the departure lounge in Perth, it felt like there was really two hollows around my clavicle. It felt like really hollow. And I said to Brad, I said, this is really weird. You just don't, cancel your holiday because you felt a bit weird. So we just went in and then the stroke happened. So if that's a sign, I'm just not sure. So, yeah.
So when you say the stroke happened, what happened exactly? What did you notice?
For me, I was looking at my phone and I didn't know how to use my phone. So that's probably one of the signs. Next moment, I was slumped next to the bed. I was like spaghetti. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. In the weird way, I could still understand what was happening. I heard my partner just re-shouting, we need help, we need help. I was very aware. They got another guy and they took me down the stairwells into the foyer, and that's when it went pear-shaped. So they put me in the car, and then after that I was conscious for about and probably came through probably about 12 hours after that. So that 12 hours, I had no idea what happened. So
just completely gone. Where were you when you came back, when you were awake again? Were you in a Nepal hospital?
Yeah, so I was very, very before I got was very, very aware of what was going on. With that 12 hours, I had no idea what happened. Obviously, there was so many tests that was happening. I had to get CTs, MRIs, all that sort of stuff, which I had no idea about. When I came through, I saw a doctor, and I kind of knew I was in a hospital, but it's very different ED than very different to Perth. It's very quiet, third age. I didn't know why I was in hospital. I didn't actually realise that I had a stroke. I just didn't know what was happening. Fortunately, my partner came in a bit later, and the doctor came in and they told me that I had a stroke. With me, the doctor was trying to see what was happening. I've been diagnosed with global Broca's aphasia.
Mm-hmm.
So that impacts your communications, language center of your brain. So the doctor, he was trying to see how I was going. He showed me 3 items: a pen, a tie, and a watch. And he showed me these items and he asked me, what are they? And I looked at the doctor very quite blankly. I had no idea what they were, let alone how to spell it. So those 3 items were the start of my recovery of Broca aphasia and having a stroke in Nepal. So
do you know what kind of a stroke it was? What caused this challenge?
Yeah. So for me, at that point, we diagnosed with a clot. So I had clot buster to remove the clot. So yeah, so it was a left-sided stroke. It didn't actually impact my spasticity or anything like that. It's just the brain injury. There's no physical deficit with having the stroke. So it's left-sided stroke and it was a clot.
Okay. So how long ago was that, did you say?
That was nearly 5 years ago. Yeah.
Right. How much longer did you stay in Nepal?
So in Nepal, I was in hospital for about 8 days. And then I was about another 6 days in the hotel for waiting to get fit to fly home. during that time, in hospital, it was really, it was very surreal. Fortunately, with the trip, I had travel insurance. So if I didn't have that, I would have been in a very different situation. In the hospital, they've like guards at the door. I couldn't actually go out from the hospital without having my PJs on. Each time you go out, there's almost like these really armed guns, rifles and things like that. So I think they do that. Yeah. So it's just so each time I went out there, you're having all these guards. I wasn't allowed out.
That's not because you were a stroke survivor or patient. Is there some other thing that happens in Nepal where people are guarding the place with guns? Like, is that what that is?
I think the reason is that I think at that point, like it was I'm not sure, maybe the cost of it as well. If I did a runner, who's going to pay for that part of the hospital visit? So at that point, it hadn't been paid.
Wow.
So yeah, it was, it's just before I was leaving, they had one of the accountant or whatever he was, he came in and was making sure that we had insurance and stuff like that, and we weren't able to leave until that part of the exercise has been covered. So
do you know what's going on though? You've had a stroke, you've just woken up, and I imagine you're not doing very well at this moment. Do you know what's happening with all of that stuff, or are you lucky that somebody else is dealing with all of that?
My partner was doing all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's really quite weird. I knew what I could understand what was happening, but I couldn't verbalize it. With the Broca aphasia, so my partner was actually going through all that part of the exercise. It was really quite, that part of it. It's really weird having my stroke. I felt so peaceful. It was almost like it was very, very surreal. Like I knew what was happening, but it didn't impact me, but I wasn't really there. So it was happening. My stroke and all that was happening was over here. It wasn't really affecting me at that point.
Right.
I'm trying to explain it, but yeah, that's it. That's the best way. I just felt so peaceful about it all. It's just like, oh yeah, life is good. And when you have a brain injury, you just really just focusing on that moment. And I think having that stroke, it was just being in the moment, which was it was very, very, very surreal. Felt like unreal. Yeah.
So then I imagine you didn't know how serious the situation was, because a clot, she had the clot buster. Yeah, it did help the situation, but you obviously had been impacted in the brain, and you had some issues immediately. Were you aware of how serious the situation was, or was it just, let's go on this trek?
No, I had no idea. I just thought everything would be fine. And I think Brad, my partner, he said, everything will be fine. So I just trusted him that everything will be fine. And that's all I had. I didn't actually think about the long term of having a stroke. I didn't. I had to do some speech therapy when I was in hospital as well, and I had to try and write my name. I couldn't know how to write my name. We're giving all these the fruit, can you tell me some different fruits? I had nothing left. I didn't know any, and just trying to see what I actually have lost. I was doing these little items in the room. I didn't know what they were, let alone write them. And food is the other thing they did. They said, what food are they? I said, I have no idea. Right. So, they're trying to say what fruit. I had nothing. There was just nothing. I didn't know.
So this is in Nepal.
Yeah.
And then after the hospital, did you immediately leave Nepal and come back home?
No, fortunately, my sister, she was able to come from Nepal as well. So there were 3 of us. So I had to get a fit to fly to come home. So we had to wait a bit. So I was in the hospital for about 8 days, and I was about 6 days in the hotel. And then I had to go see the what's it called? The registrar. Is that right? Yeah. The hospital. And I had to do a few tests with him to make sure that I was able to fit to fly. Fortunately, I was able to come home, which is which is good. And coming back home, there was so many dramas with the health system in Nepal. I had to have injections so that my blood is quite thin. And with drugs, you have a brand, and there'd be about 4 or 5 different brands for the same drug. The doctors prescribed a particular drug, a brand, but none of the pharmacies didn't actually recognise the drug, so they wouldn't give it to me. So it took about six pharmacies to get the drug that I needed to come home. So that was just before we were flying out. So we were ready to go, and we just had to get this drug. It was just crazy. Before I see the doctor, before I left, he was showing me all the items to see if I'd actually learned something. You know, we mentioned before about the Penchai watch. So as soon as I went into the registrar, I think it starts with the C word. The consulate, no, the consultant. That's it. Yeah. And as soon as I went in there, I said, "Yeah, that's a pen, that's a tie, that's a watch," and I told them how to spell them. And then he showed me another item, and he goes, "What's this?" And I looked at him really blankly. It was a phone. I didn't know what a phone was. So I felt I got ripped off on that one, I think.
That's interesting.
So fit to fly home, which has a very different stance. I shouldn't have been flying.
Wow. So you know how right now you can tell me that he showed you a phone and you didn't know what the phone was then?
Yep.
Are you telling me the story of somebody else telling you that you didn't recognize a phone? How did you recall that whole conversation with them?
It's really interesting. Like when I was conscious in Nepal, even before I had this stroke, or when I've had this stroke, everything was so vivid. I could actually go into the hotel and tell you exactly what it looked like. Even when I come through with the hospital, it's very, very vivid. Like my memories on that part are just really, really clear, and it's the clarity of it. And it's kind of weird because I've lost so many, part of my brain, the Broca's area, like that's all gone. But all my memory with that stuff is just, it's so vivid now. Even now, it's just, I can see it. I can just see it.
Right. So you had this awareness issue where something did drop off. You didn't know what a phone was. You couldn't recognize it, but you can recognize and remember the whole entire interaction with this person at the time.
Yeah, definitely. It's just really surreal. It's just, I don't understand why, but I think that's part of the brain that was, that part of the brain was still functioning, I think. So yeah.
So you eventually got home. You left. You got fit to fly. You got home. Now, when somebody has a stroke, normally, whether they're in their home country, whether it's Australia, wherever they are, in the US or in the United Kingdom, they usually have a whole bunch of things that they have to do. Go back to the hospital for follow-ups and for tests and for all those type of things. You had a stroke in Nepal. They gave you the clot buster. You came home. How did that experience continue once you got to Perth? Did you follow up with them and explain to them that this is what happened when I was in Nepal? How did that go?
Yeah, that actually did happen. I was actually, we went first class through the travel insurance. My partner is a nurse, so I had to have a nurse with me as well, because he was a nurse who was able to come with me we didn't get additional help.
Right.
If he wasn't a nurse, I would have to transfer with another nurse to actually take me back to Perth. So we came home on my 50th birthday, so best present ever.
Wow.
Yeah, at that point we would have been at the Annapurna Trek, so yeah. So that was, I can't remember what day it was. And then on the Monday after I came back, I think I came home on a Saturday. On Monday, we went to ED at what's it called? It's a Charles Gardner Hospital. I was in the hospital that day for about 16 hours. They're doing all these different tests and just to see the impacts of the stroke. So I can't remember what sort of test, but it was like there was a CT, an MRI, and that was the start of all the tests. As you know, you have strokes, they have to check everything. So that was all part of it. I was able to come home that afternoon, and they wanted me to come back and do another test called a Doppler. So that's like an ultrasound. So that was organised on the Monday. On Friday, I had a Doppler. My sister and one of my friends and my partner, Brad, we went to have a look at this ultrasound. So when you get an ultrasound, they just do ultrasound and they go, yep, all good, we'll see you, all's fine. They did the ultrasound, and one of my friends, she actually saw the Doppler. So it's the carotid artery to check that there's no breaks or clots and things like that. I was there for about an hour and a half, waiting. You can't go yet. What they found is a massive clot in my carotid artery. So what they believe is, when I had the stroke in Nepal, part of the clot was dislodged into my brain, which is why I had the stroke. And they found a massive clot. So at that point, I wasn't going anywhere. So I was admitted into hospital, and I had surgery the Monday to have that clot removed. So flying with a massive clot there is probably not the best idea. No.
So you had some luck on your side with a clot in your artery. You've come home. Thankfully, that clot didn't move further or dislodge any more parts of it. And now, what do they do now? What's the process to treat that? How do they go forward from there?
Yeah. So I had a thrombosis, I think it is, it's a thrombosis, but they actually had to remove the clot.
Yeah, a thrombectomy, I think it's called.
Okay, yep,
something like that. Yeah. I might be wrong.
Yeah, it looks like
whatever.
They had to have that removed. So they get things. It goes through your groin, and then it goes up, and it's actually goes up through your vessels up to here, and then they actually remove the clot, and then have a stent to I think it's to make sure that the vessels aren't going to explode. Yeah. So that was really quite more challenging than having the stroke in Nepal, believe it or not. When I went into recovery, my blood pressure went down, so I had a MET in the recovery, and I think about 2 seconds, there's about 50 people just on top of me getting all these drugs to get my blood pressure back up. So yeah, that was the start of recovery, having Broca aphasia.
Did you feel that it was a very difficult time going through that procedure, or are you just reflecting on it now, thinking that it was harder than the original situation, which was a small clot breaking off and going into the brain?
Yeah, I think at that point I kind of knew that I've got a lot of work to go.
Mhm.
I think it's a realization, like at that point, my like speaking and things like that was really quite in hit and miss. I thought I was doing really, really well to communicate and things like that, but apparently I wasn't really that good. I still know, like I remember in the hospital, I was looking at lying on the bed, but I didn't know what a bed was. I was looking at the toilet and the bathroom. I didn't know what a bathroom or toilet was. So I was trying to remember just what are they? What's a towel? What's pajamas, all that sort of stuff. So that before I had the surgery, when on the Friday that weekend, I was just, looking at all these items, trying to remember them all. And that was really challenging. And I think at that point, that's when I knew that I have got a lot of work to go to get to where I want to be.
So you know that it's a toilet, you know that it's a towel, you just don't know what they do, what the point of it is, or what their use is. Is that what it was, or didn't you even know what they were?
No, it's the opposite. I knew how to use them. I didn't know what they were.
Okay.
I think we've lost the connection, Bill. Oh no, came it back. Yeah, we just yeah. So yeah, it just So I didn't know I didn't know what they were, and I didn't know how to spell them, but I knew how to use them.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And that was just that. Yeah, and I think at that point, I think that's when there was a realization of what's actually happened to me. Yeah.
Before stroke, before that planned holiday that you went to, what did Fran do for a living? Who were you?
Before, yeah. I had I worked with oil and gas for 30 years. So working I did so many different roles during that time, but the end of it was working with business simplification, processes and procedures. So I was doing that, which was, at that point I was only working 3 days a week, which was, decided to reduce my hours. And that kind of turned upside down after the stroke. Yep. So 30 years working, with a good income and things like that. Having the stroke, I wasn't able to work. So it's been a massive impact from, the income stream and things like that. So
So you've come home, you're in hospital. They did the procedure to remove the blood vessel. Were your employers aware of your situation immediately, or did that happen a little while later?
Yeah, it's at that point I wasn't actually working. I got a redundancy in August 2016. So at that point, it didn't really impact my my job at that point. So I didn't actually, at that point when I kind of thought, like, I had a redundancy, and after I came back from Nepal, I was actually going to go back into the workforce. But of course it didn't happen.
It didn't pan out that way. So
No.
now you're at home and you've got a lot of time to contemplate what's going on. What are you focusing on? How are you trying to move your recovery forward so you can get back to something that resembled life before stroke?
Yeah, I think I still now, that's 5 years down the track, I still have like deficits with my stroke as well. After the stroke, I was able to have 6 weeks of intense speech therapy. Having the stroke, I was just really, really, really fatigued all the time. Like my day started with, got up, had breakfast, went to bed, had my speech therapy lesson, went back to bed, had lunch, went back to bed, had dinner, went back to bed. So having that 1 hour of speech therapy was very, very, very draining, because the brain was really quite fragile, and putting that energy into the speech therapy, that's all I had. So 1 hour. Of course, I was actually doing a few little jobs at home, things like that, like cooking. I was still able. I was able to cook, which was good. I knew how to cook, which is good.
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
And 6 weeks was really, really challenging. And at that point, you kind of realize how I'm really fortunate. Like Broca aphasia, I think there's so many different levels of Broca aphasia. I was able to communicate, which was good. Lots of people can't with Broca aphasia, and I was able to communicate in a weird way. Like I need to get a lot of help to having a conversation. I want to say something, but I just don't know how to. So it's all those conversations. This is what I want to say. I knew what I wanted to say, but I didn't know the words to tell what I felt about or what was happening with the situation.
So you're in a difficult situation. Maybe you're getting emotionally upset or you were getting frustrated with something. Right at that moment, you knew what you wanted to say, but you couldn't say it. Could you tell the other person, I want to say something to you, but I don't know how to say it? Is that what was happening?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so you could tell them that you didn't know how to complete the sentence that you're trying to make in your head. You can tell them that perfectly well, but you can't tell the sentence that you actually want to tell.
Yeah. It's just really, that's exactly right. And it's like even like with as I mentioned before about what a towel was and things like that. We had I got an app, and it's going back to, at that point I didn't know how to read and write as well. So I had this app and had all the animals and snake and how do you pronounce it. So I was looking at this snake. I didn't know what a snake was, so I had to learn all that sort of stuff. I think my recovery was really quite exponential initially. So I was just learning so many stuff. We go for walks, and I said to Brad, "What's that? What's that? Oh, that's a curb. That's a light. That's grass." So that's how basic I had to start learning to relearn the objects around the world. On top of that, I had to learn how to put sentences together, which was really quite challenging. With Broca aphasia, if I wanted to say I went to the beach, if I wrote it when I want the beach. So what you want to say, it comes out very differently on paper when I was able to start writing.
So, in that moment when you don't know what the light is or the curb is or the grass, you learned that when you were a baby, right? When you were a kid, and as you became a toddler and all that kind of, you learned that. Was it completely gone from your mind? And is it accurate for me when I say, is it accurate when I say that you have learned that again from scratch, like the entire thing? This is a book, this is a towel, this is a thing, and that's a fresh memory from 5 years ago. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'm not sure how it works with your brain. I think it's a combination. I think, like, yeah, I think like it's almost like a detour, like the Broca aphasia, like my memory, that's gone. So you have to go through a different part of your brain to get that word and then retain it as well. So I think that's why you get cognitive fatigue, because your brain has to go for a long way to get to where you get the information. With the stroke too, I had like all the items. I lost all the lyrics of songs.
Uh-huh.
That's all gone, and all the rhymes. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. That sort of stuff. That was all gone as well. But my memory of like holidays and things like that before having the stroke, that was also vivid. But that's only part of it, and so I lost all that. So it's really quite weird for me. You kind of think, oh, that's weird. I'm like,
I love what you explained. I love what you explained about the memory going to a different route. It's the classic example of neuroplasticity, isn't it? It's going to a old part of your memory from a different direction, and it's using the event that's happening right now, which is the grass. What is that? That's grass. Somebody telling you that that's grass. It's rerouting, and it's going to this other place where you had something, a memory of something that was grass before, and it's reconnecting both of them.
Yeah, it feels like that. Yeah.
When you relearned what grass was, did that stay with you for a while, or were you forgetting that often?
No, it's all about repetition.
Mm-hmm.
So I just said that's grass, and that was it. Be about as for the Penchai watch, it took me 10 days to remember those 10 items. So right. 3 items. So yeah, so it's all repetitive all the time. Like that's a pen, that's a pen, that's a pen. Now later, what is it again? Oh yeah, that's a pen, that's a pen. So it's just repetition over and over and over and over again.
Wow.
Yeah.
How much of a strain does that place on your relationships with your partner and also with the people around you? Did people understand that, or are they not dealing with that well?
No, initially it was really quite challenging for everybody. Having that conversation, I was having a conversation, how do I say that? How do I say that? And, like I want to say this, but I don't know how. So it becomes very wearing, stuff like that. The frustration for me as well, like I can't get the sentence together about what I want to say, and then try to communicate that with your partner. That's another issue as well, because I'm getting frustrated with myself, and then they get frustrated because I can't communicate what that I should be. And it's really quite challenging. I think part of it, I was actually dependent to have people around to communicate. So I was independent at that point. It's really interesting. I think I mentioned before I was working with oil and gas. I used to do lots of work with Excel spreadsheets and things like that. I knew how to use them, but I didn't know, the icons and things like that. I could use that, but I just didn't know the icons, what they were, but I could actually use an Excel spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. Also, with having the stroke, all my PIN numbers and stuff like that, I remembered all of that as well. Like, so it's almost like the mathematics side wasn't impacted, but the verbal words and that were impacted.
Right.
So yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah.
So you're somebody that's quite competent, you know, 30 years in a particular industry. You're at the high level of performance as far as using your brain and your mouth, and most of us are, regardless of whether we've been in an industry for 30 years or whatever. But what I'm trying to say is there was no doubt about how you did things. You knew how to do things. It was not a difficult thing for you to sit and navigate a computer previously and how to have a conversation. Now you're sitting at a computer. Did you have any ability to type an email, for example? Was that something that was possible?
At that point, no, I couldn't read and write. So doing an email, no. Initially, like I think it was about 8 weeks. Oh, during my 6 weeks of speech therapy, I was able to put a sentence together. It's quite interesting. Like with the speech therapy, they showed me magazines, and I had to look at the cover because I couldn't actually read, and explain what was happening with the words. And my first sentence was Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban. So they're in the cover. And my first sentence was, Nicole is annoyed at Keith. But I didn't know how to pronounce, I didn't actually know how to write annoyed. So yeah, so that was my first sentence. And yeah, so as you mentioned, having an email, that wasn't going to happen.
So what you need to do, did you send a message recently to Keith Urban and to Nicole Kidman and let them know how important they were in your ability to learn how to speak again?
Yeah, maybe I should call them. I've got this, like with all my I've got a notebook, and I've got all the progress of my recovery. So I've still got the notebooks, and I can see how far from where I started to where I am now. So yeah. But yeah, so at that point, emails were just not going to happen.
You know, how important was it reflecting back and seeing how far you'd come? Because I feel like that really supports recovery. Did it help you?
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So with the do my notebooks and things like that, I think for me, like I was almost a perfectionist. So I wanted to get quick. I wanted to get better quickly. So I was doing lots of worksheets as well. I had the speech therapist, and I had a tutor as well on top of that to enhance my recovery. So I can't remember what I was going to say.
That's all right. But what I was asking was about comparison. So how far you'd come.
Yeah, I've done really well with that. I think after about a year after that, I felt pretty good with. I still have issues with reading and writing, getting words. I get words mixed up, but it doesn't really matter in the whole scheme of things. I can send emails and things like that. So it's about a year when I felt confident to actually send an email without getting it edited with someone else.
Right. Are you in that process? In that 12 months, are you focusing on being able to recover your speech and your ability to communicate all the time? Or is there weeks and days where you said, stuff it, I'm not doing this anymore? Or like, how do you navigate that time?
Yeah, some days I just had to go with the flow, and I think I'm really quite fortunate. I had friends and family that would understand and help me to communicate with things like that. So yeah, that year was, I just wanted to get better quickly, which I wouldn't recommend that either.
Why wouldn't you recommend that? What is that?
I
Because you had timelines? Did you have a timeline and then you didn't meet it and then you felt bad? What was the issue?
Yeah, and I think my personality, I just wanted to get as far as I can quickly. And that was a detriment on my health as well, mental health as well. And not having that I could do this before, now I can't do it now. And I just want to get back to that point. And going through so many worksheets and things like that to actually to get my recovery back on track.
So you were sometimes your own worst enemy by putting too much pressure on yourself, and then causing, maybe causing days where you weren't getting a lot of results, and then you were focusing on the fact that you didn't get a lot of results, and then you kind of created a bit of a negative loop by the sound of things.
Yeah. I think there's the time at some point, I don't know how long it was, but I just actually realized that, you know what, it doesn't matter, it's a recovery, it's a long-term recovery. It's not going to happen overnight. And when I had that epiphany, it's like, oh, it's actually okay. I'm okay where I'm at the moment. And, I've done really, really well considering where I was, with, pen tie watch. Also did, I had like speech therapy one-on-one, and I also did group speech therapy as well. And doing that was kind of like, you know what, I've done really, really well, because we've had people in the room with Broca aphasia. And as I mentioned before, there's so many different levels of disabilities with Broca aphasia. And during that group session, I kind of thought, you know what, I've done really well. Yep. And, it was actually quite interesting, like we were supporting each other with our journey of Broca aphasia. So, yeah.
They have a lot in common with those people that you previously didn't have anything in common with, and you never would have met if it wasn't for the stroke. You still keep in touch with some of those people?
No, I don't. There's one lady that I did, but initially, but not. We've lost touch. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
You and I met around 2 years ago. You came and had a bit of a trip into Melbourne, and we went out and we had dinner at one of the local Indian restaurants, I think. Yeah. And I think that sounds like it was around 3 years after the stroke incident.
Yeah.
I never would have picked up that you had Broca's aphasia. I, in fact, am learning this about you right now. So you had progressed quite a lot by the 3-year mark, as far as I was concerned anyway, because of somebody, who never really knew you. Are you very different now to what you were before the stroke? Because I've never met you before that. Do you see a difference between you now compared to you then?
I think people that my Purple Circle group, they know there's a difference as well, but people just like acquaintances and things like that, I don't think they don't see the differences. They don't see the difference. Yeah. Okay. So it depends on how you have the relationship. So it can be very different. Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, I'm a lot more relaxed. Yeah, so you kind of go, it goes with the flow and things like that. So yeah, I think I see the difference in myself as well, and I think it's almost like a invisible disability. So you portray, I've got it all together and things like that, because when you're sick, you get your best A's, so people see how am I going to say, this is with Broca's aphasia. I know what I want to say, but I don't know how to. No
worries. I'm patient. Just take your time.
So when I go out, I have makeup on, and I do it when I'm actually not tired. So if I'm really fatigued or tired, having the communication is just not going to go anywhere. I just get frustrated. So you do those conversations when you're feeling good about it all and you're not tired and things like that. So as I was saying, it's behind the mask, you know, behind the mask, what's happening now, my brain is just going really quite crazy, trying to communicate what was happening. It's kind of going, oh, you know, before I had this stroke, this would be really easy to communicate. Now it's not, and it's just trying to say what I want to say. It's just not going to happen. So
what you're doing, tell me if this is accurate. So what you're doing to yourself is you're trying to have a conversation. You're not having a good time because you're tired. You're not having a good time getting the words out. Then you're struggling to focus on getting the words out, but at the same time, you're beating yourself up about it. And you're saying, why can't you get the words out? And you're getting frustrated. And at the same time, you're still trying to make the sentences that you want to get out.
That's it. Yep. Because it could have been easy and it's not. But
Right.
I think in that one, I'm learning that's actually okay. If I can't get a sentence together to what I want to say, that's actually not going to, you know, it's not going to change the world. So you have to be kind on yourself as well. Okay, yeah, it's what it is. So yeah.
So you're 5 years out and you're still noticing that when you get tired, the aphasia kicks in a little bit and makes things harder?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
It's almost like when you're drunk, I think. You can't get it slurry and you can't get a sentence together and you think you're doing really, really well.
I know exactly what you mean about feeling like you're drunk when you're not actually drunk. That's me a lot of the time. But it's mostly if I've had a bad night's sleep, the next day can be a really challenging day. And if I have 2 bad nights sleep in a row, the third day is a really hard day. I can't get much done at all. It doesn't matter what I've promised and who I've told I'm going to do something. It just doesn't happen. And I've got to apologize for it or just, you know, just move on from it. It's just one of those things. But people that don't know me don't understand. So that's a bit of a challenge because then I've got to explain myself to people. And I don't really enjoy explaining myself all the time. But but that doesn't happen so often. How long does it take for you to get tired now? Do you find yourself being able to get through a full day most of the times, or is it very different? Does it chop and change?
It's all over the shop. After the stroke, I've decided I was going to do volunteer with the Stroke Foundation. So I do, I think you've done that before, Bill, the Safe Stroke speaker as an ambassador. So I had a presentation yesterday. So after that, I had to go, I was only there for about an hour and a bit. And when I got home, I had to go home and have a nap because I was just knackered because of that 1 hour just communicating as well. So other days I could go, you know, for 2 or 3 hours and I'd be fine. So yeah, it really depends on the day. So you think there's a, rhyme and reason, but there isn't. I've also learned with having the stroke, if I'm doing like initially, probably about 2 months after stroke, I started working with aged care. I was working 3 mornings a week, and that was way too hard. So I was only working about 12 hours a week, and that was the limit that I could actually work. And that's been really, you know, as you mentioned before, like prior to the stroke, I could work full time, and now I can't. I'm only working 12 hours a week, and that was too hard as well because you have to kind of balance the fatigue and the stroke and the Broca aphasia, and it's really, really hard trying to get that balance. It's really, really hard.
Yeah, I found that I'm nearly 10 years into my stroke journey, and the hardest part of it sort of started, I think it started after the second bleed. It's when I lost the majority of my function. It's when I couldn't recognize myself or my wife, or I didn't know where I was or what I was doing. I didn't know how to type an email. And all those things have come back. I do know how to do all those things. That's all okay. But the fatigue it still catches up with me.
Yeah.
Even though I might have 2 or 3 really amazing days, it's kind of like, oh, I've had really good two really good days. And there's a third day is going to be a bit of a down day. So I've got a plan for that.
Yeah.
And bosses probably don't really understand that, and they really don't care whether your third days are going to be a bad day. They just want you to be up and about all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So has that struggle that you have got in the way of you staying even employed part-time in another industry, for example?
Yeah, it's been really hard. Like going into corporate to being a carer, that was a big issue as well, you know, and obviously the income as well, it comes with that. Yeah, it's just, it's been really challenging.
Yeah. What other support are you getting? Right now it's been 5 years, and I imagine the speech therapy and all those other therapies have kind of stopped happening. Are you getting any other support right now for any other things that you're going through?
No, nothing. Yeah, there's initially when I had the speech therapy, I went to a company called Read Right Now, and I had a tutor. I can go back with them at this point, but last year I got quite sick, so I had to really put that in the background and just focus on mental health, physical health, and things like that. So yeah, I had to change that.
Mental health challenges are a really big issue with regards to stroke, and causes like this ongoing second recovery, or that's needs to happen at the same time. Did you know that you had mental health challenges, or did that kind of catch you off guard?
It was almost like I could see it was going to happen, because as I mentioned before, I was working 3 mornings a week and I was just tired 24/7, and I just kept on going and going and going. I've got a few friends that you did too much, which is probably right. And because I did too much, I didn't actually really focus on the mental health issues as well. So I could see my mental health is going down. So I could see it was happening, but it was almost like going down a spiral. And I knew it was going to happen, and down the track that actually happened, I just had, like mental health breakdown issues. That was about this time last year. And I think that was because I was doing way too much. And in hindsight, it's got to go with your gut. Like, I knew that I was working too much, but I just kept on doing it anyway. And I knew that wasn't going to be healthy for me, but I did it anyway. So I didn't really listen to my gut. I just going with the flow. Yeah.
Interesting. So you've learned something from that, and do you think what you've learned is going to help you not fall into the same trap down the road?
Yeah. I just, it was really quite horrible. It was a really horrible part of my journey. I'm very aware that it's really quite fragile now. But now I'm actually putting my mental health, as my priority. So unfortunately, challenging for both of us. My health is my priority. So it's all about me at the moment. So doing the things that I like, going to the beach, watching sunsets, catching up with friends. I've started working a little bit with a support carer but I'm actually not going to do too much of that either.
So you started working as a support carer?
Yeah. So I'm only doing a few hours during the week. If it gets too hard, I just won't.
Yeah.
Well,
I suppose there's really strange thing about this whole situation is the only way we're going to know if we are doing too much is to do too much. I mean, it's
yeah.
the only way we're going to get there. It's not a great thing to find yourself in that really difficult time, but that's the only way we're going to really know what we can and can't do. We have to test the boundaries and see how far we can come.
Yeah.
And then pull back and hopefully learn from that and not make the same mistake again in the future, you know. So you're doing really well to navigate this journey, go through the tough times, and then reassess and and take a different path going forward. I think that's the only way to do it. I found myself in similar situations where I would do too much and then really crash for a couple of days and regret the decision that I made before that to overdo things. But then on reflecting on it again a little bit further down the track, it was like, okay, I had to do that. I had to know where my limits were. And now when I found myself needing to achieve something or do something quite challenging, I would take a different approach, a more gentle approach, one that wasn't going to wipe me out for 2 days, one that was going to perhaps, you know, require me to recover for half a day or, you know, 3/4 of a day instead of 2 entire days where I was totally unproductive and couldn't be around anybody. So
I'm more than happy to cancel events. And lots of people will understand as well. So it's kind of like, you know, and obviously you still got that same fatigue thing as well, don't you?
Yeah, it's not so bad on a daily basis. If I get really good amount of sleep, it's good. So if I go to bed and get myself at least 7.5 or 8 hours of sleep, I'm usually quite good most days. But I have this weird time in around 3 or 4 o'clock where I need to just wind down for a little bit. And then I kind of get a bit of a second burst of energy, and that gets me through to the end of the day. And if I find myself pushing through that 4 o'clock kind of fatigue time, I don't know what else to call it. If I push through that, then I get wiped out at the end of the day, and I'm completely useless after about 8 o'clock. So I don't want to do that. I want to pay attention to my body, honor what it's requesting of me, and give it some time to recover when it needs to recover. And I don't do midday cat naps or anything like that anymore. But at the beginning, I used to do a lot of extra sleeping and just to excuse myself from places and go home early or just do whatever I needed to do to get me through, because it's not the same as it used to be. It's never going to be.
You know, it's I think in the scheme of things, like having the stroke, you know, I would rather have not had the stroke, but during it, I think I'm a much better person now than before the stroke. I kind of understand yourself better. You know your limitations. You're a bit more compassionate. You understand a lot more, you know, other people's journeys, and I think that's been the best thing for me, is just as well.
So you've learned quite a lot from your experience about yourself and about other people that we previously were unaware of. And I found the same thing. I became way more compassionate and way more aware of the difficulties that people face because I faced them. I'm still facing them. I wasn't
Yeah.
I wasn't living this version of life, which was the blessed one, the perfect one. Wait, don't get me wrong. I feel blessed and everything's perfect as it is, but it's exactly what you said. Like I was able to relate to people that were
Mm,
doing it a little bit difficult now, and
mm.
that made me see them in a better light, in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. There's always a silver lining with having a stroke as well. Yeah, as I mentioned before, I wish I didn't have it, but I did.
Yeah.
And you just got to really embrace, the fatigue and getting tired and things like that. It's just life, and you just got to, I have a blessed life. And you just be focused in the moment as well.
Yeah.
Because as we know, life can change in an instant, and it did, and it absolutely did for the stroke survivors and anyone that have any other diseases. Life can change, and you just got to just embrace what you have.
On that note, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I wish you well, ongoing recovery, and
Yeah.
thanks for sharing your story.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
Thanks so much for joining me on today's Recovery After Stroke podcast. Do you ever wish there was just one place to go for resources, advice, and support in your stroke recovery? Whether you've been navigating your journey for weeks, months, or years, I know firsthand how difficult it can be to get the answers you need. This road is both physically and mentally challenging, from reclaiming your independence to getting back to work to rebuilding your confidence and more. Your symptoms don't follow a rule book, and as soon as you leave hospital, you no longer have medical professionals on tap. I know for me, it felt as if I was teaching myself a new language from scratch with no native speaker in sight. If this sounds like you, I'm here to tell you that you're not alone, and there's a better way to navigate your recovery and rebuild a fulfilling life that you love. I've created an inclusive, supportive, and accessible community called Recovery After Stroke. This all-in-one support and resource program is designed to help you take your health into your own hands. This is your guidebook through every step in your journey, from reducing fatigue to strengthening your brain health to overcoming anxiety and more. To find out more and to join the community, just head to recoveryafterstroke.com. See you on the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.